Hello, happy morning, or whatever time you're listening to this. This is About Time. I am Stephen, and I'm usually joined by my boyfriend Ben. But today, however, I'm joined by YouTuber, TikToker, and host of the Horror Hour. It's George Alexander. Hello.
What a lovely introduction. Do you know, I never get introductions because normally I'm on my own show just introducing myself. So it was really nice to be introduced like that. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I've been a fan of the podcast ever since I found my favourite TikTok. That is one of my favourites that I go back to most evenings, and is the Maria Jackson impression video.
Is it? Yes.
Because it is just iconic. And yes, I was like, these are my people when that video popped up on my TikTok. So thank you for having me.
Yo, you're welcome. No, thank you for joining. So you're here with me today to talk about the 7th episode of this current series, part 1 of the finale, Wish World.
Yes.
It was certainly an episode of television.
It was. But listen, I will preface it. I've watched this 3 times and now this episode 3 times. I enjoy it a little bit more now that I kind of know what it is.
Yeah.
But I still personally, out of the new RTD2 or whatever we have now named this era, I still think The Legend of Ruby Sunday was a better episode 7. Empire Death ruined it, but to me, it did. But it just felt, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about it, but yeah. I don't hate this episode, but I just think there's a lot going on and there wasn't enough time to talk about it all.
I would agree, really. I think, like you, I've found on a repeated watch, it's improved for me. I will say there are things about this episode that I really like as a concept, like the whole 1950s sort of conservative, quote-unquote, perfect world that Comrades created. That was so good, and they did a lot in that was good. Like, obviously, you know, all the prejudices that are sort of baked into it.
Yeah.
They could have expanded that a lot more.
I think, to me, and this is the problem I think that when we suffer with shorter season series, I don't want to become American, shorter series, is that you miss out on episodes. Like the stuff with Ruby, I was like, how did we get to this point with Ruby? In terms of how is she turned up at John Smith's house with the knowledge that what happened before? I would have loved, hear me out, I would have loved an episode previous to this where it was sort of Don't Worry, Darling, Stepford Wives with Ruby Sunday, who kind of breaks out of the Matrix. Like, that's her whole thing, is that it's because I feel like you needed a bit more of that, because we didn't get, personally for me, enough of the Wish World. It was kind of like, oh, we're here, it's Belinda and the Doctor and Mel's next door, and now let's go into what the Rani's doing. I think having something with like Ruby being stuck in the world and then breaking out, kind of remembering stuff, and then the episode following being like her going to find the Doctor, and then she meets the Doctor at the door. Like, how did she get to the Doctor's door? That was like my question. I was like, and
that's a very good point.
What made her start questioning the world? That was like, and we might get answers, but if Empire Death's anything to go on, then we won't. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think there's, like you say, shorter seasons. It just means there's a lot of stuff that you would like to be answered, but you just have to sort of take for granted. And it's a little bit unsatisfying.
It is, but again, this is by no means least. I don't want it to come across that, and I've just come in like, oh, that's bloody. But honestly, it is. It's an enjoyable episode. I just think this season's been so strong, and I just think that Belinda wasn't used well in this. I was just like, and I guess maybe that's the point, is that, you know, she's in this world, she is just this housewife, and it's kind of. But I mean, it was iconic of her to call the police on her closeted husband. I did appreciate that part. She was like, my husband's gay. Call the police.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's definitely, it's a shame that she didn't have much to do, but obviously that's kind of the point, isn't it? She's relegated to this, you know, housewife mother role. I don't know. Let's kind of go through it then.
Yeah.
So obviously we get this iconic scene of the Rani on horseback.
I know. Yeah. It's like, come on, Game of Thrones.
Interesting. Yeah.
The whole seventh son of a seventh son. Like, I like the idea of that, because I was so delusional in the when they released those pictures and she was in. I was like, oh god. It kind of, and I think that kind of made me go, okay, Judge, I need to realize this is RTD2. Is that I was like, you know, is that Ruby in? There's like the photo that, and some people might not have seen it because I know a lot of people don't always like check them. I think, but there was the image that was released with the Rani and the hood and the baby, whatever, I can't remember, I thought I kept calling it Disaronno, but that's a drink. You know, I was like, are we going to get a kind of reveal that the whole thing about Ruby's thing is part of this? It wasn't. But I did like the idea of the seventh son thing. Again, my question was there a harbinger for that god or not? Because the gods always bring harbinger, but then who was the harbinger of that? Was there one, considering that they're a god?
I don't know. I mean, because we've had other ones that haven't had, like Sutek obviously didn't have one.
Well, was Harriet not his?
Oh, sorry. Yes, she was. I swear not all of them have, though. Like,
because I was trying to work out. So the one in the first evident god is Maestro and was little.
What about the toy maker? Does he count?
Yeah, I suppose so. But then, did the toy? Yeah, I guess he didn't have. Maybe Russell hadn't thought that far ahead at that point.
Well, he probably not. Yeah.
He was like, actually, let me add this in. But that's true, yeah. But I did like that. And I did look, I kind of was like researching, and I did see that in some cultures, the seventh son of the seventh son was often named Doctor.
I saw that. I read that this morning. Yeah. Interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And again, I won't read too far into that because I don't think in the 60 minutes that we've got next week, we're going to get any answers to that. But
exactly.
I just thought that was like a fun little nod.
It is fun. I think it's what in Germany they would call a Zufall, which means coincidence, which was obviously that his name was Zufall, which was fun as well.
I know, that was really cool. And it was I like that. I did like that open. I thought it was fun, and it gave us a chance to see Archie Punjabi's Rani on her own in a scene and kind of just be like, okay, this is how she's taken. And I think she did a great, one thing I will absolutely say, she did a great job of kind of having some Kate O'Mara mannerisms, but also doing something new with the Rani, which I liked.
Yeah, she's very, very good, very menacing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those sort of delicious villain roles that you just kind of can't help but love.
Oh, yeah, the campness of it, like waddle away. I was like, yes! Do you know what I mean? I love that. But yeah, it was definitely kind of an interesting open, and then it obviously set up. At first, I didn't even see the first kiss that she gave the baby with the wish. And I was like, since when was the Rani doing these magic tricks? And then it was only I was like, oh, wait, there was like, she kissed the baby again when she did it with the kids. And I was like, oh, okay. Those poor children. Gone now. Ducks now. Free.
Yeah, it's very strange.
But it was and then to cut, like, I thought, oh, now we're going to get the intro. But then, of course, we've got a big wish in 160 years. And then, bam, alarm clock goes off.
It's, I think the way they did that whole, like, lifestyle and the house, particularly, like, the 1950s inspired. I love that aesthetic anyway. I think it's...
Yeah.
It's very camp and very, like, it's perfect for that kind of, everything's perfect and glitzy on the surface, but, you know, like 1950s, if you look back at photos of it, it all looks very sort of pretty and happy like that, but actually living in the 1950s was not that great, like, especially if you were gay or disabled or whatever.
Anything other than a white man, yeah.
Exactly.
You were basically, it wasn't a great time for you.
No, exactly.
I mean, let me tell you, when WandaVision came out, I ate that shit for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because I was just like, oh. And I think, again, that's because I kind of knew that they were doing this Wish World thing. I think I was kind of thinking, oh, we're going to get all these. But because, again, we're working with short episodes, short seasons, I feel like we didn't get to explore it as much. But I really loved, like you say, the aesthetic of it. I liked how all like the little pictures in the house were all these like art poppy looking things. I was like writing down at first because I was like, the picture behind their bed is the Old Bailey in London. I was like, then there was me trying to be, I was like, what could it mean? The Old Bailey behind their bed? Is it that justice is behind them? I was like, no, you know. And then I realized that they had like other pictures in like the kitchen and stuff with other like London monuments. So it's very, you know, traditional, like, look at these great British institutions, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was kind of given that, which goes with kind of his style of the world he wants.
Of course, yeah. I think that it's great the way this episode was sort of obsessed with the past and the way that conservatism is like, the golden past that must be maintained, that
it's very relevant.
Was never actually really that golden. Exactly, it's so topical.
And that's something I always like will say to like Russell will always like when you look at stuff, and this is kind of why I'm a bit like, when you look at stuff like It's a Sin and Years, I'm like, this episode of Doctor Who should have been Years and Years, an episode of Years and Years. Like, that's like the type of thing we should have gone for. And I'm just like, he just needs a little bit more. I'm just like, can we not just give Doctor Who like an hour slot? Fuck bloody Strictly Come Dancing or whatever's on after. The old people can watch it on iPlayer. Like, give us like just full episodes where you can explore it more. Because like you say, the topics are so now and important, but I feel like because they're just done so quickly, it's glossed over and we don't spend as much time thinking about it personally. That's my...
No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. I feel like we should also talk about the dinosaur, bone dinosaur things.
Yeah, what was that?
So on a thematic level, I loved them and I thought they were really good as part of this, like, you know, obsession with the past and like, these, you know, I almost see the dinosaurs as like the figures of authority, like government, like sort of stomping around, and they're sort of invisible because you don't see them day to day, but their effect is there.
Yeah.
So on that level, I loved it. I just feel like in terms of in universe and in the story, like, why were they there? Like, why did Conrad's world include big dinosaurs stomping around?
I guess, listen, a lot of straight men like Jurassic Park.
True.
I know I like Jurassic Park. And I think maybe, you know, there's that. It would have been hilarious, though, if half of it would have been like a Roman Empire, because there's always that joke, you know, the social joke about like, oh, how often does the straight man think about the Roman Empire? Like, it would have been funny if, like, instead, I mean, I know we kind of did that with another alternative reality, but I think that would have been like quite funny to know. But that's what I kind of just took, like, oh, it's just like him being like, well, in my world, you know. And I loved that Mel was the next door neighbor, and I just relate to her so much with her, like, you know, I'm lonely, so I'm just going to sit at home and just be jolly glad. And I'm like, baby, that's a Saturday night for me, let me tell you. So me and Mel, I was like, I felt seen in Mel's character. But what I really liked, and I was like, it would have been interesting to see everyone else's bins, is how much doubt, how many slips were in Mel's bin, because it was pretty high. And I'm like, does that mean that she, again, like stuff I would have loved to have seen, like, has she been questioning it? Like, you know, to have that much doubt or those many slips, you know, what has she been thinking? And we kind of got it. She was looking out, but again, I feel like we could have had a little bit more on that, because she only had like that one line, and then like that was it.
Yeah, I agree. All their wheelie bins were for slips. There was nothing. There was no other rubbish.
Yeah,
it almost makes me wonder, like, is this world happening in real time? Or is it like a, you know, like the sort of Forest of the Dead, Donna's dream world sort of thing? Is it, you know, are they actually living their lives and working 9 to 5, or is it just little snippets of, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like moments of time. Yeah, and I think that's kind of where my head was at when we had Shirley and her sort of thing. And she said, you know, that one of the guys there at the camp had said that they were in like a almost frozen they were in like stasis in a way, that because, you know, of course, she said that she wasn't getting the medication for her spina bifida. So it's like, you know, if she had been living days and days like this, weeks, however long, or maybe it had just been a case, again, we don't know how long this wish world had been going on for. Had it literally just been that day? Like, did they just...
Yeah, I almost think it's literally real time in terms of what we see in the episode. Like, as the minutes go by, that's how long it's been like that. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
It's just obviously it feels to them like it's been longer, but...
Yeah, it was definitely... I'm intrigued, and I think it is a cool idea, and I have always wanted Doctor Who to kind of do something like this. So, and again, obviously, it's always difficult, and I always find this with episodes, like penultimate episodes, is that things that I might say on this, maybe in no relevance come next week because things might be explained or whatever. So I always have to preface that by saying that I haven't watched episode 8 isn't out yet. So anything I say could get thrown out the window because episode 8 goes, well, here it is. Because the one thing that I do want to talk about that I feel like we have to is Poppy.
Yeah.
First of all, I was like way too into it because I was like, is the meowing thing something? Does it mean something? Because she kept meowing when she came in. The no thing, I feel like she's the only one who seems to realize she's in this world. She's like, isn't it going to be great to her? And she's like, no. But what is going on there? What is going on?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's very tempting to read something into every little thing, isn't it? Like the cat thing.
Yeah.
And then link to that the fact that they live on Calico Lane, which Calico being a type of cat as well.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably nothing. But yeah, the fact that she keeps going no about stuff is like... Yeah. It's fun, isn't it?
It is. And she's a brilliant... Like, I'm so glad that they just had the actress, like, you know, say her lines rather. I'm glad, although we did get the return of the CGI baby mouth with...
the giggle, yeah.
But, and I was like, oh my God, like the side that was getting a bit of Elvis. But I like that kind of, it was her... just like kind of being, and she's so cute. I was like, I would, you know, I don't necessarily want kids, but I would have Poppy as my daughter. Like she was just like, in a little dress, and I'm just like, oh girl, you have no idea what's going on. But yeah, I'm just so intrigued by what's going on with that. Like, of course, you know, not to push to the end of the episode, but it was kind of mentioned that, you know, the doctor says that Poppy is real.
Yes.
So, like, but in what, like, that's what I mean. I'm trying to work out in what way. Like, is it just because she's real from this? I know this is, I'm assuming that the space babies, now that we've got the Ronnie back, is kind of, and maybe we'll get that in the next episode, is, you know, it could have been one, I assume is one of her experiments, maybe is how they bring Poppy into this. But that's something I'm intrigued by, because I'm like, well, if it is the Doctor's daughter, is it also Belinda's daughter or not? Is it just that she's come from, you know, so many questions, like, is she come from the Doctor? And then I had this whole thing with the bi-generation. So the Rani, obviously, and Mrs. Flood have, which those two in this episode, iconic duo. Anita Dobson, love her. And I just loved kind of how she was this subservient. But I still think she's got stuff going down.
Oh, yeah.
She has these, like, she has these little moments where I'm like, where she goes from, like, all right, to dead pot, like, and I love it. And I'm like, okay, what? Do you know? And I would love something to kind of come of that, because I think it'd be quite funny if she's like, oh, I just kind of used this Rani to get my experiment done because I couldn't be bothered. So.
Yeah. I have some thoughts about Mrs. Flood and the Rani, because so on the one hand, like, it seems like they're setting it up to look like she's gonna maybe betray the other Rani because she's the way she's being, you know, treated. So it'd be interesting to see if they follow up on that or if they subvert it. But my other thing is that the character of Mrs. Flood doesn't feel like the Rani. And so when you realise that she's been the Rani all along and she's been orchestrating this plan before they bi-generated, I can't really buy it. Like, she seems like just a batty old lady that doesn't have a clue what's going on. And so you've got to think, like, if in Interstellar Song Contest she hadn't got sent out to space and her brainstem froze, that would have been her just on her own enacting this plan that now we've got Achi Punjabi doing. And I can't see it. I can't see Mrs. Flood doing all that.
And I think I totally agree with you, because I think realistically, when you now look back, and I think it's even evident from interviews that Russell has done at this point, where it's like, she wasn't the Rani when she showed up in that Christmas special. And it's okay that wasn't it, but let's not, you know, it's difficult to then say she suddenly had this whole orchestrated thing, because, again, I would like to have a little bit of detail on why she was living next door to Ruby. Like, was she following the Doctor and knew Ruby was, like, that he was following Ruby, so then went there? And then the same thing with Belinda, like, evidently moving with Belinda. And one thing that I'm sick of in this show, because we've only seen one once and it was basically the same thing, but they swapped the console. Can we just see another TARDIS now? Like, I was like, we didn't need this thing in the sky. I mean, I guess that everyone else once had to, like, kind of be in it and stuff, but that could have been, like, her TARDIS.
Yeah. I mean, presumably she's got one.
Right.
Hence how she's whizzing about everywhere. But yeah.
Oh, it's just on that. Maybe that little thing's just to hover time craft that she was on. The Segway that she was riding up on. But yeah, I just think I'm intrigued to see how they deal with Mrs. Flood in the finale and going forward, because I don't know how moving forward. To me, both of them can't get away.
No, I mean, I think one of them's going to have to die. Probably Mrs. Flood will die.
Yeah, and I think something that Mrs. Flood said, and that's in this episode that I was, like, interested by, is the whole, which it was such a funny scene as well, is obviously where she says, "You're my child in a way, you know, you sprang from my loins," and then she just, like, and I felt like that was so, like, Kate O'Mara when she, like, turned around, she was like, "That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard." But, like, looking into that, my one nervous thing for next week is that we're going to have the return of David Tennant, and I'm like, girl. But I would be intrigued because they kept saying, like, oh, he doesn't have a daughter. So and again, guys, just bear in mind, this is somebody who just thinks overly about things. So just take what I say with a grain of salt. But, like, if the idea that bi-regeneration is that you are, in a way, coming from this other person, so, like, mother and daughter, father and son, mother and son, whatever it may be, which would then technically make 15, 14 son. And then that would technically mean that Poppy is 14's grandchild.
Right. I see where you're going.
Which would mean that the Doctor would technically be Susan's father and grandfather, which would then explain why there isn't a daughter.
Yeah, you might have cracked it. You might have just cracked it, honestly.
Because I just think like that was such a that line was kind of, and the reason that I listened more is because Mrs. Flood was being Ronnie-ish in the, like she had that "you're my child in a manner of speak" rather than like she wasn't like "you're my child in a manner of speaking." You know, she wasn't doing like Artful Dodger as she has been in the past few episodes.
Yeah.
You know, she was giving kind of serious, and then you know when the Ronnie was like whatever. Again, it could just be nothing, but I'm like, you know. We have to talk about. I feel like there's so much to talk about. We have to talk about Susan. She had another appearance in this episode.
Yeah,
very briefly.
Very brief. It's like, is she? I don't know. At this point, I don't know if she's going to be relevant, but she must be. Like, because
I do. I feel like she has to show up in Reality Wars because not to be too, you know, down dumps, but Caroline Ford isn't getting any younger. And right now, Doctor Who isn't going to come back until at least 2027, if, you know, depending on what news articles you read.
Well, yeah.
You know, so I'm kind of like, we've got to wrap this up, which is another reason that I kind of think the whole Poppy and dealing now with daughters and whatever that is, I feel like this is the perfect moment to bring her in.
Yeah.
I know some people might not be happy with if they change the... Some people say she's not a Time Lord. I know that they weren't called Time Lords in like the first few episodes, like they were never referred to. Do you think she's a Time Lord or just like Gallifreyan?
That's a very interesting question, isn't it? I think because the idea is that the Gallifreyans are just the people who live on that planet, but the Time Lords are the sort of noble class.
Yeah.
And does that mean, is it only Time Lords that are able to regenerate? So could Susan regenerate or not?
That's what I mean. And then if that's the case, that would then, if she doesn't, that would blow out the idea that Poppy is some sort of pre-regenerative Susan. And I think that is kind of something that needs answering. But
although we know from obviously The Timeless Child that the Doctor is the origin of regeneration. So if Poppy and therefore Susan are biologically from the Doctor, then she would be able to anyway, regardless.
Yeah. That's true. And that's something that, again, I'm intrigued to see, because something that I never, like, was not on my bingo cards, especially with Series 2 as well, is and hats off to it, is the amount of Chibnall era content that is continuing to be used. Yeah. And I think it's really good that Russell isn't, you know, I think a lot of people are like, you know, oh, just absolutely pretend it didn't exist and get over it. And, you know, let Russell come back and do this. But I think it's really good of him that he's kind of trying to make sense of The Timeless Child and sort of make it have a bit more in-depth to it without going too far into it. But I do sometimes worry if that's at the detriment of his own work, that he's trying so hard to like build off of Chibnall's era, which he didn't necessarily do. You know, I know there was a big gap in between Doctor Who when he came back again, but I feel like for someone who said you don't need to watch Doctor Who to watch series 1 and 2, there has been, especially in this season, there's been so much classic or 2005 Doctor Who that it's difficult. Like I have my friend who's watching it at the moment, who has just finished watching all of Doctor Who. Like, he watched it because of, which I loved. He watched season 1. He's American. Watched season 1 on Disney Plus, and then after that, he was like, I need to go back, and he watched like all of 2005 all the way through, and he loves it. But I just think that now it's so people. He was like, who's Omega? And like, you know, you've got the Rani and this Omega like Nod and Susan, and he doesn't know these are all classic stuff, and he's still trying to get his head around that. We've got a lot going on at the moment, and that's why I don't necessarily think that Omega's going to show up next episode.
Oh, I agree. I'm 100% on with that. I don't think, because the biggest giveaway for me was the fact that if they've cast someone for Omega, like they would have used them surely, and they've used this clip from
the Big Finish, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the essence of him, and to be fair, I'm happy with that. Yeah, because I don't think we need to shoehorn another villain. Exactly, in the 11th hour. It's
feeling too overstuffed already. So you know, we don't need that another presence. I think it might just be a threat of like this is what could be coming. But yeah,
it's like on the outskirts.
But no, it is baffling, isn't it? This whole thing of it's a great jumping on point. You don't have to know anything about previous Doctor Who. And then they're doing so many deep cuts and stuff. I can't understand it.
I know as a fan is great because I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm like, as somebody who's like, I want the show to not that I don't think this show won't, and I do genuinely believe that this show, like, that we will get another series. Like, it's just going to be in another year and a half, which, you know, we've had small breaks. That I mean, there was a year when we didn't have Doctor Who, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it Capaldi's era?
2016 or something? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's happened. But and as I say, I like all of the little tidbits of Classic Who and things that he's bringing back. But yeah, I just think for wider audiences who they're trying to bring on board, it's just so much in so little time that I feel like it's been a case of he's just saying a lot of stuff and then seeing, which it seems like it from the Ronnie situation, that he's just seeing what sticks and then goes, okay. You know, because he mentioned that in series 1, he was like, oh, we're trying to make good content. And I was like, shouldn't we be making good stories?
Yeah.
Should we be doing that?
Not just making stuff that's going to make people talk online. Like,
bits on TikTok, which I know is the way the world works these days. Obviously, you know, you have to make clips, but at the detriment of the show, I don't know. But like going back to where we were up to in terms of the Doctor works at Unit, which is not Unit. I loved that set with the way the set was like, I know obviously it was the same set, but they'd like redesigned it. I loved it. Yeah. And it made me think like, because years ago I was like, I really would love not like complete, but a period piece in like the 70s or 80s, like of a Unit show then. Yeah. And like that kind of era. So this kind of gave me a little bit of that, which I loved. And I was like, Kate was so funny in her, like, you know, well, will there be no shouting? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, she was very good.
And obviously Ibrahim in his little suit.
Yeah, I know, he's very popular.
I know. It was good to see him do that. I didn't realise his first name was Christopher, by the way. He posted, like, I only looked, because I looked on his Instagram and he was like, Christopher Ibrahim. And I was like, Christopher Ibrahim? I was like, I don't know why.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I didn't realise that.
Because I didn't think they've ever mentioned his name.
No. But yeah, we have to talk about just that scene where the Doctor slipped up and, you know, he called him beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the way that the tone shifted, it was so relatable. Like, as someone who went to an all-boys school, it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was very much, it was done in a way that was kind of 1950s, like, you found another man beautiful. But I feel like, you know, if this had been like modern day, that was high school, and that was one of the, you know, the popular guys going, are you gay? In another world. Like, do you know what I mean? That was what that scene was given.
Yeah, yeah. Or like that thing of when they find out you're gay and then they say, well, as long as you don't hit on me.
Yeah, don't be looking at me in the showers. It's like, I'll never forget. And because I was very, I would say, fortunate compared to me, because I was never that I can, well, I wasn't in on it. Was never like physically bullied for being gay in school. But I do remember once in a science class, there was a student, and I can't even remember, he was just talking about something, and I don't even know what he said, but he turned around to me, like, he obviously talking about a guy, and he turned around to me, and then we were all in the class, and he goes, I'm not gay though, and like looked at, like, to me. And I just turned to him and I was like, don't worry. I said, even gay people have standards. And our teacher was like, way to the kids. I was just like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. However, you know, if Colonel Ibrahim had you know, spoke to me like that, I would have cried.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. And the poor Doctor, like, the Shooty's performance there, like, he looks so like, oh shit, like, what is going on? What's just happened?
It was a really good moment. And it just kind of, again, reiterated Conrad's ideologies. And I think it was, again, very of the time. I did love the Doctor Who book. I thought that was quite fun. I love that they've made him basically J.K. Rowling. I thought that was really lovely. I feel like Russell was kind of like, can you make the book look like Harry Potter?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely loved that touch. It's like a subtle enough dig that she can't really complain about it. But yeah, I mean, who cares if she does, to be honest? But you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I thought it was absolute genius.
It was so good. And also it just looked, I was like, damn, yeah, the first Harry Potter like cover is really like memorable. But I'm like, that I would love that Doctor Who cover. Like, I think that'd be really nice, you know, just to have like the sleeve of it. Like, I think it was, and I saw they did a couple of versions.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah,
which I thought was really nice. Maybe they did that in case she complains. They've just got to another version where they've got a similar looking book. But obviously, as well, in that unit scene, Susan Twist is back as the tea lady.
She is.
And I was like, oh, I feel like I would have kind of, not the, you know, the bits like the homophobia, but like have it work in an office and then like someone coming around with tea, and she was like, oh, I'm a malted milk girly myself, so she didn't have any of them. But I do love a bourbon or a digestive, so she was cute. Do you think that's just like the fact they made her look the same as her character in episode 2 of last series.
Yes.
I think it's just like a fun nod to
Well,
it.
it could be a fun nod. I mean, honestly, my thought was, well, they're going with this 1950s aesthetic, which isn't a million miles away from the 60s. And so they're like, well, we've already got the costume for her from before, so we'll just put her in that again. Like,
True, yeah. Because it was, and I just think it was nice. I was like, I'm glad she did come back, because there's a thing recently with Doctor Who where UNIT hires every single person on the planet and then we never see them again.
Exactly.
Like, you're telling me that we haven't, like, I know Catherine and Donna had a lot of holidays.
Yeah.
But she hasn't been in that office once.
No. And also I was wondering about Rose Noble, because then when obviously, you know, she being trans would also be someone that Conrad would not want in this world. So I was kind of expecting to see her at the camp with Shirley and everyone.
Yeah, that would have been a really good nod to it, but I guess didn't have time or the money to pay everyone, because there was a lot, you know, a lot of actors in this episode.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm kind of glad she wasn't in it, because it would have been one person too many. That already, like Mel, like even Mel being in it was like, I question what was the point really of her being there.
Yeah. I was like, if you're not going to like add to this story, you know, if she comes into next episode with a bit more of something to do, you know, because obviously the whole time I'm like, I want her to meet the Rani. We need to have that next If we do not get that next episode, I will be pissed.
And have her be like, you know, last time I met you, you dressed up as me and blah, blah, blah.
Like, I really want the Rani to like turn to her and go like, Mel, still ginger, still trying to keep that up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Kind of. Whereas, you know, she's like, is complete, doesn't look like her. Or, I mean, it would be camp if, you know, if Archie comes out in like a ginger wig.
Yeah.
And just like, she's like, hi.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, again, too many characters. Because I was thinking, where is 14 while this is all happening?
Oh God, who knows? The thing is, like you said, like there's this kind of distant worry of, is he going to show up next week?
Yeah.
Because they have been very quiet about it. And if you go with what they said at the time, it was very much like, he's parked now. He's not relevant anymore, which I think is probably true.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. But it does make you question, doesn't it? Like when things like this are going on, especially when the whole world has changed, like it did in this episode. How does he fit into that? Has he got a job somewhere and he's providing for Donna and all that?
And why wouldn't they use him? And he's a Time Lord, so
Exactly.
Why wouldn't they use him to crack it? Why did they need 15?
Exactly.
But again, episode 8 could explain all of this and could be sat here going, damn, look how foolish I look. But, you know, I think there's a lot. If David comes back next episode, I feel like the only thing they can do with this is that somehow the bi-regeneration becomes irrelevant again and everyone goes back into one. And then you don't have to worry about Mrs. Flood, because we evidently know that 14 has to become 15.
Well, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, because they've left it quite unclear to me. And I was hoping when the Rani bi-generated as well, I was hoping that meant we were going to get a bit more explanation about what it means and how it works.
Yeah, I was hoping that too.
There's two ways of looking at it. There's either this Time Lord has split into two separate entities, and one of them will just go on and maybe die one day, while the other one is the true one that continues.
Yeah.
Or it's this sort of timey-wimey thing of looping back, where at some point 14 will regenerate into 15, which loops back to the point where he's split out in the first place.
Yeah, because it was for that line that Shooty says in that first episode, in the 60th special, where he says, you know, I'm fine because you got better, we're doing rehab out of order, which then to me means that he must become 15.
Well, yeah, this is what we were discussing, because that seems to make sense, but then it is Doctor Who, and it's like, you know, just because they're doing it out of order, 14 could still do it, and that could still then affect 15 at the point that he started, if that makes sense, without them actually physically coming back together, because they are the same person.
Exactly.
But who knows? I just wish they'd been a bit more clear about it, because he's just brought about this whole mythical thing and just sort of left it there and like left us to clear it up.
Sometimes I think like maybe he's like secretly in love with Chris Chibnall and was like, how can I make Chris's arc not look so bad, I'll invent bioregeneration with zero constant. Like, I feel like he's like, quick, Chris, I love you. Let's do bioregeneration and not explain it. And he just changes his ideas. Like, I remember the interview, after that episode, he was like, it was in the commentary, and he was like, I like to think that every doctor then biogenerated. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
So, like, in every episode, so what, like, Christopher Eccleston is still in the TARDIS with David Tennant and Rose Tyler? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
We could talk about that for hours,
We could.
Are you bored or still enjoying the Pantheon storyline?
I'll be brutally honest, I've never really been that keen on it.
Okay, yeah.
I think I could deal with it when it was the Toymaker and then maybe Maestro. But I'm just a bit like, yeah, because the problem is these gods are supposed to be so powerful, but then they always get defeated in 45 minutes really easily.
Well, let me tell you right now, the person that I've been wanting, and is never going to turn up, and I'm just accepting this now, because I am an SJA girl until I die, Mr. Trickster. I'm still like hoping that this baby is the trickster in disguise. And it's just like, because he's to do with like reality and wishes. Like, I want this world, but they keep like playing on him. They mentioned him in the last series, and it would be nice to see him, but I guess maybe. And to be honest, some of these episodes have felt more like Sarah Jane Adventures. So I don't feel like he would be amiss in this world. No, he wouldn't
be out of place.
Yeah, I just think it would be nice to have him back, even if it's just so that we can get Maria Jackson on the phone to say, Dad, he's back.
Yeah, phone up the expert in fighting the trickster.
I know, yeah. And she's like, there's dinosaurs in the sky. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sorry, the abysmal Maria Jackson will always be iconic.
Yeah, I've started charging now to do my impression of her.
Have you? As you should, cameo.
I'm only joking.
I'd pay good money. But yes, where were we up to? Oh, we were just talking about like the baby and the wishes, and yeah, I'm intrigued to see where that goes, and how they wrap up that, and if they will wrap up gods in this finale, or if we're going to kind of continue having them again.
It feels like Russell is so in love with the idea that it's probably going to keep going on and on and on for a bit.
I mean, I feel like they could easily wrap them up by the end of this finale. The Doctor kissing the wish god and being like, "I wish there were no more gods."
Yeah.
And then they just go, and then the baby just disappears.
That would be great. I'd love that. I'd be happy. But
like, okay, let's go. Now give us the Doctor 15 with both Ruby and Belinda in the TARDIS for Series 3, please.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm fearing it's never going to happen, but,
Yeah. I'm wondering, we had Salt, which kind of was the gateway for this whole thing. Maybe Pepper's going to be what closes it all off, something like that.
Salt and Pepper. They should have called Poppy Pepper.
Yeah.
Like Pepper Potts. And then, like, she could have...
yeah, maybe Peppa Pig's going to come in and help us all out.
Oh, my God, maybe.
Yeah.
Of course, there's another cameo in this episode of Rogue.
Oh, no.
Let's talk about the CGI.
Do we have to?
We have to mention it because it was so random.
I have a theory about it.
Okay, go, tell me.
Because it's so random, and my question is, why was he there? Why did they choose to have him in there? And why was he able to contact the Doctor? So my theory is that he wasn't really there, that it is the Doctor's subconscious noticing that something is not right, and therefore representing it to him as a figure that he's going to trust, telling him that message. So I don't think it was Rogue. I think it was the Doctor's brain just telling him something's not right here.
Yeah, because I suppose it was that time of night when they said that he does the most thinking.
Yeah.
So it would be more likely that he is perceptible. And if he was, watching Conrad's thing and starting to think, then it would make sense that he kind of... I think it's just interesting because also I saw on the behind the scenes content, I think it was the YouTube one, that he said that he filmed that just after filming the episode of Rogue. And he was like, they told me to do it. So I'm like, interesting that... Because to me, it felt like that was... And so if that's wrong, then maybe my whole thing's out the window, because to me, felt like that was Russell T Davies doing an End of Time Part 2 and being like, let's wrap up everybody you've met because you're going to regenerate next episode. Because him saying, I love you, I'm like, so then how, when these come back, is that it? Are they both just going to be in love with each other because they both kind of acknowledged, the Doctor's like, I really liked him. And Rogue says, I love you. He gets a little bit more out than the 10th Doctor did at the end of Doomsday, so it's nice that we're going in the right direction. Of getting cut off when you say that word. He got to love. But yeah, that's what it felt like to me. But then I'm thinking, if it was recorded so early on, then maybe not. I don't know. I'm
Who
intrigued.
knows?
I did really like Rogue.
Yeah.
In that episode, and it was, but by God, I'm sorry, I know we're not really supposed to speak of him, but I thought that was a certain other actor with an American accent.
No, me too. I thought exactly the same.
Okay.
As soon as you heard Doctor,
yeah,
I was like, whoa, fuck, no.
I was like, are we doing this?
They wouldn't dare.
No. But do you think we'll see Rogue again?
I mean,
or would you like to?
I honestly don't know. I think I enjoyed the episode Rogue.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I always feel a bit like sequels, as it were, and sort of follow-ups can be a bit really, like they never sort of quite work that well.
Yeah, I know,
but then it's, you know, you feel like the Doctor would want to go and find him and not just like leave him.
I don't know, he left Susan, girl, and that was so many odd years ago.
Yeah.
He doesn't, I mean, I was like, he said he was in his hell dimension. I was like, I can see the Big Finish audio's writing itself now, like him living in this Rogue, being a demon hell person. It was nice, but I don't know how relevant it's going to be going forward.
No, I don't think it is.
I think it was just a cute cameo. And obviously the whole tables don't do that. I think it was a nice way to kind of get the Doctor thinking. And then of course we cut to Belinda calling the police on him, and then both ended up getting arrested.
Yeah, that was so funny though, the way it went from, there was this guy on the TV and I really liked him, and she was like, excuse me, hello, my husband's gay. Like
she was like, the left woke agenda has got my husband.
Yeah.
And we must
But you know what I loved about that as well is that she phoned up and informed on him, and they came to take him away, and then they literally then took her away as well.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of that poet, you know, that poem about first they came for the whatever, and it just felt like that.
And then they came for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't realise, only on second watch I was like, oh, I assume then that the mother called on Belinda because Belinda couldn't remember her daughter.
Oh, maybe.
Like being born. Because that's when she came and she was like, I'm so sorry. And then she was like, and maybe that's where she realised she got, I don't know, or maybe they just knew that. I mean, again, they knew they were going to have doubt because they're the two main characters.
Yeah.
And I did really like that scene with Belinda. I know we mentioned Poppy briefly, but I love that scene with Belinda and her mum and the auntie and Poppy. And it was a nice scene because I feel like something we've lost. And again, obviously, I know it's in this Wish world, but it's nice to have just companions have families again.
Yeah, although again, the same problem with it being such a short season. Like they crop up for these tiny little cameos, and you just feel like you don't get to know them at all. Like you think back to Jackie in season 1, and she had several appearances, like even not that many to be honest, but she just felt so fleshed out.
But like the end, for example, a perfect example I always think is the end of the Age of Steel, when they go back and they've been somewhere and she just wants to see her mum and she's like, you're right. Like those little bits, it's like, oh yeah, remember, they're still there. But because we don't have that time, I feel like it just gets a little bit. But yeah, I like that episode in her. And that's why I'm still trying to work out the Poppy situation, is like, if she didn't give birth to Poppy, then again, that kind of begs the question.
Where has she come from?
Where has she come from? Has she just come from the Doctor? And again, I mean, I suppose we could go on about that for hours. But then obviously I do want to talk about the Shirley and Ruby storyline that's going on in the background. I really liked the idea of, I really liked that scene. I thought it was a great way to kind of add those characters and just kind of reiterate how much of because obviously Conrad in this episode is a bit more back from what he was because he's now in this perfect world. He's not such an angry little boy. So I think it was nice to kind of be like, no, but this is his intentions. This is what he's actually like. Don't forget, just because he's in this, white suit like telling these stories that he is, this is all because of him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's like the CBeebies bedtime story reader. Like,
I know. Yeah. And like when he was like, I'm tired, I was like, good.
Yeah.
Like, and I did like that note that he was like, sometimes I forget about the weather and then it floods in South Africa.
Yeah.
I was like, and I did like how they kind of said that it was never supposed to be sustained because it just can't be.
Exactly. Yeah. It is ridiculous.
But I'm intrigued why they chose Conrad as the person to wish this world into existence.
Yeah.
Just because it's so far from reality, maybe? And is that
and so sort of anti the Doctor as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because what did you think? Obviously, when the Doctor starts to get his memories back, or the Doctor sees the Rani for the first time towards the end of the episode, how did you feel about that scene and their relationship? And Because I know some people had
Well,
issues.
It was very difficult because his process of remembering his reality was quite slow, and so it was hard to feel when was the moment that he actually knew who she was and what the significance of that was. Obviously, by the end, when they're out on the balcony, I think he knows fully. But obviously, she's fantastic. And the dance, the waltzing scene was interesting. I will say, as soon as we saw the glitter ball, I was like, oh my God, please no. Like, she's going to put some pop song on.
Yeah. But I was waiting for in Russia long ago. And I was like, no, we're not doing this again.
No, exactly. So I'm glad they didn't go down that path.
And I liked that because I know a lot of people said, oh, she told that whole story. Like, she wouldn't be interested in that. But to me, as I say, the way I took it was she's a scientist who, is trying to make the Doctor question everything. So her being like, we were lovers, were we? That's just her, experimenting on him rather than being like, we were together. Because I do think it is important to make a difference. And I think, and hopefully we'll see a bit more that in whatever her plans are in the final episode, that we kind of see a difference between her. You think to her first appearance on the show when she's just like, you're the one who's obsessed with the Doctor, to the Master, such iconic behavior that she's not asked. And I know obviously in the next appearance she does very similar to this one. She uses the Doctor for her own gain, which I feel like this is what is happening. So I don't think it's a mile off from who she is. But I know a lot of people were kind of like, oh, she doesn't seem like the Rani. But the Doctor's not the same in every generation.
No, he's not. But no, you're very right. There does need to be a distinction between the Rani and the Master, because otherwise, now that Time Lords can switch gender, if they're too similar, you don't need both characters.
But yeah, I liked a question I did have though was like the Vindicator. So obviously she had the Vindicator. I assume that she obviously, again, something I would like explained is what happened from the moment the TARDIS exploded in the last episode to how we got to where we are. She does say, don't you wonder where your TARDIS is? Does she have his TARDIS? How does she have the Vindicator?
Yes.
Then my other question was, if the Vindicator was just to be used, to get back, why is there still a reason they couldn't get back? It hasn't been explained why they couldn't. Were they just bouncing off this reality because it wasn't real? What is the reason they couldn't get back? Because it seems that the Rani needed the Vindicator for something. So I'm guessing, was it her that somehow? That's what I want to know. Yeah,
I think it is that. I think it's a bit of a paradox in that, the reason they couldn't get back was because this wish world had been created and they couldn't access it. But the reason the wish world got created is because of the Vindicator, which he only invented because they couldn't get back. So yeah.
It's one of those classic Doctor Who things.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of what happened to the TARDIS and stuff, I feel it's all part of the wish, and I think that explosion, literally, it exploded, and then they woke up in bed, at the beginning of the episode.
That was a wish.
Yeah, and then everything, who knows where the TARDIS is? She did actually allude to that, so presumably she's got it somewhere.
She's got it, yeah.
Yeah.
Or does Susan have it? Is that why she was in it in the last episode?
Oh yeah, maybe.
Come home. I don't know. I feel like she has to be in it. You've got to get, I don't know, get back to me, grandfather, which also, I thought Belinda was going to turn out to be Susan, which I feel like years ago, I feel like when they first announced Belinda as a companion, there was theories that she was going to become Susan. And evidently now I don't think that's the case. But I'm intrigued. There's a lot to wrap up next episode.
There really is.
But I'm open to it and I'm excited. And again, no spoilers, but having seen the clip, I'm kind of like, okay, I feel like maybe that episode can be better than Empire of Death in terms of wrapping things up. But I still don't necessarily think that Wish World was better than The Legend of Ruby Sunday. I just think that that moment when Harriet Arbin just starts reading off all the gods and the music and that, to me, I was literally on, I am dramatic as fuck, but I was on the edge of my seat, oh my God, what the hell is going on? Whereas this episode, I feel like the ending was Omega. I was like, okay. And then him just falling into the abyss, I was kind of like, oh, that's the end. So, but I'm definitely intrigued by.
Yes.
What would you like to see from the next episode?
What would I like to see? I think, that's such a hard question because so much has been sort of poured into it. I guess I would just like to see a clear story that makes me feel something. If that's not too much to ask.
Yeah, I agree.
But we'll see. I just, I hope it's not too much of an over-egged pudding with too many things thrown into it.
Yeah.
Because there's speculation about the Master, as there always is.
Yes, of
even
course.
partly by me, because so we had
God's sake.
I've got to say we had last year in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, in the build up to the reveal of Sutek, there was the score, the Master's theme, this thing, and then it turned out not to be the Master, and I was like, why would they use that music? That's very strange. And then in this episode, it's the scene when he's talking about Rogue having been on the television, and you just get this dun 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 in the background.
Yeah, and
it's like,
I agree, and I think if the Master were to come back as a past regeneration rather than a new regeneration, who would you want it to be? Do you think it needs to be Missy?
That's a good question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Part of me is like, well, it's a new era, so do we need a new Master?
Although they could regenerate in that episode.
In the episode,
into someone else.
Yeah, that's true. I say this like jokingly because I don't actually think the Master is going to be in the next episode. I think it would be one Time Lord too many.
Yeah.
But you never know. You honestly never know at this point.
I mean, you don't. I didn't think Susan was going to be in the Interstellar Song Contest, but here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
There we were.
If you could go back a couple of years and just say to fans, like, oh, in 2 years' time, you're going to have a series finale that's got the Rani and Susan and Omega in it.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, shut up. That's not happening.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I remember distinctly because I was watching my friend who was live reacting to that episode. I was watching it with him, and that music came on. I remember typing, "Oh my god, it's the Master!" And he was like, "Who's the Master?" Because he hadn't watched it at that point.
Yeah.
And then when it wasn't, I was like, "Why did we do that?" Although I have found Murray Gold has some fantastic music, but the last two series I felt a little bit like, and this is where I think maybe it's just he's just reusing old. He's reused a lot of music from his previous time, but I don't know yet if it's a case of they are like just playing into this whole Master thing and eventually the Master will come back in this series or whatever, or if it's just a case of they like the music and it's a bit like Time Lordy because it's the sound of the drums and Gallifreyan and but it wouldn't explain why.
No.
It was used last series.
Yeah, the thing is, like, there's a difference between reused tracks when they've just dropped in a pre-existing track and then kept it in, or when an actual theme or motif has been reworked into a new score. For example, a few episodes ago, when we had this random appearance of Amy's theme from Roman Paradox, just dropped in that was completely out of context. That's just literally like someone's copied and pasted that from the soundtrack and dropped it in. And that could probably just be an editing thing, like it's a temp track and they just decided to keep it. Whereas this one, like the Master stuff, it's part of the new score of the episode. And it feels like a deliberate choice. Whether it's actually trying to foreshadow something or if it's even Murray just being like, that'll cause chaos with the fans. They'll think the Master's coming back. Is he just trying to be funny? Who knows?
Yeah.
He does have a sense of humour.
That's true. I am definitely intrigued because, of course, we still don't know who took the gold tooth.
Although, red nails, like, I don't know, was it Mrs. Flood? Who knows?
I see. Do you know, I think that it's Kate.
Do you think?
But yeah, I'm just really intrigued to see if that tooth comes up now or later down the line. As I say, there's so many seasons to go.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Like the stuff with the boss, it could be later down the line.
Yeah.
If we see it ever. But I don't know, maybe it's too early for the Master to come back and have the Rani and Omega in the background in the next episode would be a lot.
Like, for example, when in the Last of the Time Lords, when the Master's body was burnt and then the hand picked up the ring there, do you think Russell actually knew what it was going to be? Or do you think he just put that in to be something?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's funny that they that's now become the running gag is that like these hands, and maybe that's kind of, the idea that it's this woman's hands with the red thing is just kind of like to play on the fact that, yes, the Master Tooth is still out there. Like he's still out there. Maybe it's not so literal that like somebody, because obviously that tooth was on the end of the dock, so someone would have to be floating.
So where was this person? Just floating off the edge.
It's like, just take that. So maybe it's more of like a nod to that era, but basically to be like the Master is still alive in some form.
Maybe it's another god of the pantheon. Maybe it's like the god of nails. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put it past. We've had gods of everything.
Manicuria, the god of nails.
Listen, they give him some good names. I should have Googled what Disaronno, whatever his name is, Desertarium.
I wrote it down.
Does it mean anything?
It's Desiderium, and it is from the Latin for a strong wish or desire.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, I just think we've got a lot to wrap up. I'm excited. I'm definitely intrigued by how they'll wrap it up. So it is exciting.
Yeah. Will you be watching in the cinema?
No, because I don't like people.
That's fair. That's valid.
Like, no, I mean, I would go, but also just like I can't be bothered. I'd rather watch it at home. I'm intrigued to understand the reason behind why they're doing it, or it makes me worry for what's to, not necessarily worry in a bad way, but worry about what's to come story wise when you have to make sure that this episode is watched at the same time by everyone.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Because I'm like, either someone's going to die, or my fear of a regeneration would be, please no, because I really want more Shooty.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, it may be going that way.
I don't know.
We will see.
Time will tell.
Yeah. So on this podcast, we like to rate each episode out of 5.
Okay.
What are you thinking for this one?
I'm going to say 3.
Anywho.
And again, this could change come next episode if we get more context to things. But I just think there was a lot going on and I'm just trying to think of this in the focus of the episode rather than going, what's to come, because that's not the point. I'm talking about this episode. I just think there's a lot going on. And I think in this episode, we didn't get enough explanation for certain things, and things were just a little choppy in parts. And I just think they could have been a bit more succinct personally. But I definitely still enjoyed it. And I would definitely, it's one that I would watch again. Like I would watch it again. But yeah, that would be my pick. What about you?
No, I'm actually the same. I was thinking, pretty much bang in the middle, because like there are some things about it I really loved. I really loved the concept and the way they did the whole 1950s idyll sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then the end felt very kind of info dumpy and like a lot dumped in.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And I did like that the Rani said this isn't just, I like that they played on it and she was like, this isn't just exposition. And I was like, well, it's starting to feel like it, babe.
Yeah. But that's another fourth wall nod, isn't it? And it like, are we ever going to get an explanation for that? Like why Mrs. Flood was breaking the fourth wall all those times, which she's stopped doing now that we know she's the Rani.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
It feels like they've repurposed her character completely.
It was like, I remember there was the theory a long time ago that she was like the god of storytelling. Yeah. And it was like, okay, that makes sense. And actually, personally, I feel like that maybe would have been a better way to do it. But I think, it seems from the interviews that it was Shooty that wanted to come against the Rani, and then Russell was like, sure. And then that's my only problem is in other interviews, I feel like Russell has been like, everyone thought it was going to be the Rani, so we thought, why not? And I'm like, is that a great idea to do?
No, absolutely not.
Continuity-wise?
You should. I feel like you should know what you're going to do before you start doing it to a certain extent. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to adapt as you go along, but yeah. The other thing is like Shooty really hasn't seen any or much Doctor Who before taking the role.
Yeah.
So why did he choose the Rani? And I can just picture him just like once he got cast, like just doing a little Wikipedia deep dive and just sort of looking at the Doctor's past villains and seeing the Rani and thinking, oh, she looks camp, she'd be great. Like,
yeah, I feel like he like went onto Google and typed in like the campus Doctor Who villains, exactly. And I was like, I want to go against, and I'm intrigued. That's something I'm looking forward to now that at the end of the episode he is the Doctor again. I'm looking forward to seeing the Doctor and the Rani interact, because like this whole episode it wasn't him really, so
no, exactly.
We haven't seen those two together. So that's something that I'm looking forward to as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting one for sure. But yeah, 3 out of 5, I would say for this one.
Yeah, 3 out of 5 for me as well. Anywho. And what would your, just as a quick fire question and answer, what would your favourite and your least favourite thing about this episode be?
My favourite thing about this episode would probably be the stylistic choices of the Wish world. Again, I think I would say I was really quite into like the 50s aesthetic and that sort of like uncanny valley sort of vibe that you get from that world. So I'd say that aesthetic and that kind of thing was really good. My least favorite part of this episode would probably be the ending. I was just like, this all happened so fast that I'm like I say, I just think there was a lot, like you said, shoved into the end to kind of get ready for the next episode that I was like, this feels like, I know you're telling me it's more than exposition, but this is feeling like exposition on a level that we haven't seen before. So yeah, I just think that the story could have been tighter. I also just think that, again, he might explore more in the next episode, but Conrad just feels like he's just there. I'm like, did we need to bring him back? Could it not have been Mrs. Flood telling the story? And then the Rani doing it? Like, I'm intrigued to know how he will come into use next episode, or if it's just a case of they're waiting to do like another showdown with him and Ruby. I feel like that's where it's going.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Because, you know, she's like, we want to bring him down to earth, and maybe that'll be that, and then the Rani focuses on the Doctor. Yeah. I guess we'll see. Why? What were your 2 things?
Well, again, I'm just going to be so boring and just literally agree with everything you just said, because it's exactly the same. Like that.
Because I'm so right.
You are. That 50s aesthetic. I was living for that. Especially as well, Murray's music in the unit scene. The brilliant sort of 1950s shopping kind of music. I could listen to that for hours. And again, just the fucking dump all this information in the last 10 minutes was like, ugh. And then this final reveal of Omega, and it's like it almost felt like a parody to me actually at that point. Like we've just had the 2 Ranis, and now we're getting Omega thrown in as well. Yeah. So I'll try and reserve judgment till next week, but we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing for sure.
So I also like to ask on social media what listeners made of this episode.
Let's see what people are saying.
Matt says, I had a blast watching it. The Rani was brilliant. I don't feel like Varada was given a lot to do. I love Belinda's character and I hope she gets another season to shine.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Kate says, let's just say I enjoyed it up until they revealed the Omega, then I was just confused. Yeah, I think that sums it up actually as well.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. Dark Ops 16 says, it was a very jumbled mess and a nothing burger at the same time. The only thing I can say that I liked was the general vibes of the episode, though. The dinosaurs are really cool.
Yeah, again, there's a theme.
There is a theme.
Of what people don't necessarily enjoy.
It's like vibes over content, or like style over substance sometimes.
Yeah.
JP says, a bit of a mid-penultimate episode. Enjoyable, but mostly set up. A lot of it depends on the finale, which, again, we all agree on that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And I really like this comment from Fizz Cox. The contrast of villains is interesting. You have the Rani, who is like archetype, high camp, maniacal genius. But then you also get Conrad, who's a sad little boy, latching onto toxic masculinity and ableism, etc., to make himself feel important. Conrad is the far scarier villain because he's the one that isn't fiction. I'd much rather battle a woman on a hover scooter made of bone than debate what my role in society should be with a man like Conrad.
That's very true.
Love that comment. Yeah,
I like that idea. But something I do like about this is that it was in this world he was technically subservient to the Rani, and I was like, yes, bitch. Like when he was like hugging Mrs. Flood, I was like, please, she should smack you in the face.
Yeah, I mean they've kind of got him locked up in this room like a prisoner,
as he should be.
Well, yeah, no, completely. But like I wonder how he views everything, because like he's been treated as a like some sort of prince or god, but also he's just under lock and key. Like. Yeah, interesting.
It's given like Davros in like Journey's End, where it's like, you're their pet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So we shall see. But no, I definitely agree with that comment. Food for thought with those comments for sure.
Definitely. So, George, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Sorry if I talk too much.
No, not at all. Really, that's what we're here for.
I love talking about Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
And I don't get to talk to as many people about it as I would probably like. So thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome. And I'll put all your links to your socials and things in the show notes so people can find you.
Thank you.
Next week, I'll be back with another guest to discuss the finale, The Reality War. But until then, listeners, stay cool, stay safe.
Stay fantastic.